You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
The bearded wonder, Zane Paisley. I am a wrestling podcaster and a pro wrestling ring announcer, and I am a wrestling nerd. Also hosting with us this evening is the incredible Huck, Will Huckabee. How are you this evening?
I'm doing great, man, Zane. I had besides having an incredible Thanksgiving, I had a wrestling fantasy weekend this weekend, man. It was nerdgasm galore.
That is awesome. We will definitely spend a lot of time talking with you about that. But also, I want to bring on our guest for this evening. He is the Mempho Mofo, Mark Bravura. How are you tonight, sir?
Whoa. You know the mofo's always doing great, my man. It's great to be on y'all's podcast. It's great to be out here with the wrestling nerds.
Well, I'm especially excited to have you on tonight because for my shoot job, I have to travel, and I'm actually in Memphis tonight. Well,
congratulations.
Technically, I'm in Germantown, but right by the bus station, but it's close enough to Memphis for me.
How long are you going to be there?
Just for the evening, and I'll travel back to Indianapolis tomorrow.
Oh, well, I'm going to give you two recommendations while you were there. If you have time to go eat. It's 8 o'clock in Memphis right now. You're in Germantown, so my suggestion would be to head over to the Germantown Commissary. It's the best barbecue in Germantown. You probably don't have time to get to the original Corky's on Poplar Ave, although it's only probably about 10 minutes from you. But if you want to stay local, go to the Germantown Commissary there in downtown Germantown and get the barbecue there. Get the traditional deviled eggs that they have. You will enjoy yourself greatly. And if you have time tomorrow before you head out of town, go to Uncle Lou's Fried Chicken off of Mendenhall in South Memphis. It is the best fried chicken in the world, bar none. There's nothing close.
Well, I appreciate that. I should have hit you up earlier today.
You should have. I know every place to eat in that town because I've been to all of them.
Well, Mofo, tell us a little bit how you got started in the world of professional wrestling.
Well, literally my first memory in life is watching professional wrestling. I was very tiny. Both of my parents are from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My mom is an Italian immigrant. My granddad, being an Italian immigrant from Pittsburgh, was a huge Bruno Sammartino fan. And my dad's cousin was Bruno's best friend growing up. Like, they played all the sports together, so they were very close. So both of my granddads were very big wrestling fans. And my first memory in life is sitting on the floor in my mom's dad's house. And it was just me, my dad, and my granddad. And my granddad barely spoke any English. And my dad didn't speak any Italian, so they weren't really talking too much. So they were trying to figure out what to watch on TV. So they flipped channels, and they came to wrestling, and they were both wrestling fans. So they put that on. And then they started talking about other things. They weren't really paying attention to me. And I'm laying on the floor coloring in my Dukes of Hazzard coloring book. And I look up at the screen, and I see these four big dudes. It was the Moondogs and two guys I don't remember who they were. And they're having a match, and I'm just enthralled by it. I think this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And the end of the match was one Moondog holding one of the good guys, and the other Moondog goes to hit the good guy with his bone, but the good guy ducks out of the way, and one Moondog hits the other one with the bone, and they lose, and one of them's bleeding all over the place, and then the baby faces leave, and the two Moondogs start fighting each other. They're biting each other in the forehead, blood's flying everywhere, and I start screaming and crying because it scared me to death. So my dad and my granddad all of a sudden get out of their conversation about the Steelers or whatever they were talking about, and they flip out and they go and turn the channel and don't want me to see it. So my first experience with wrestling wasn't a positive one. But my dad's dad was also a huge wrestling fan. And soon after that, we went over there, and he was talking about these new guys who were in WWE, WWF at the time, obviously. And one of them was Hulk Hogan. And he was like, oh, he's huge. He's got these giant muscles. You know, Mark would think he's the coolest thing ever because I was a huge superhero fan when I was really little. And my granddad said, you know, the only people who are like them are Tony Atlas and Rocky Johnson. They might be even better. He'd like them even more because they fly around like superheroes. So we went over to his house. And at the time in Pittsburgh, there was a show that showed old matches. And just out of luck, the first match they showed that week on this show was Tony Atlas and Rocky Johnson winning the tag team titles from the Wild Samoans. And I was probably 4 at the time. And so Tony Atlas and Rocky Johnson come out and they look like superheroes come to life. They're massive, they're shredded, and Rocky Johnson did those flying drop kicks, and Tony Atlas did the flying head scissors, so I thought they were superheroes. So at that moment, and for the rest of my life, I was immediately hooked. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever, I can't watch anything else. So from that moment on in my life, whenever wrestling was on, I had to watch it. So when we came back to DC, where I grew up, I found out when it was on USA, and I watched it there. I found out when the syndicated shows were on. And growing up, the DC area was like the best place to grow up if you wanted to watch wrestling, because we got the ESPN shows, which were Legends of World Class and AWA. And then on the 2 UHF channels, Channel 50 and Channel 20, you had an hour of wrestling every day. So at the very least, you had 4 hours of wrestling every day on TV. And then you, of course, got all the WWF shows on Monday night or Tuesday night, Saturdays and Sundays with the WWF shows and the WCW shows. At various times, we got IWCCW, we got UWF, we got Memphis for a little while, which was my favorite, which is what ended up with me going to Memphis because I love the Memphis style the best out of all of them. We had so much wrestling. So growing up, I got to watch a ridiculous amount of wrestling. It honestly probably rotted my brain a little bit considering how much wrestling that I watched. But I was an addict, man. I was an addict. I would watch anything that came up, no matter how bad it was. No matter what company it was, I wanted to watch it.
So, with all those different influences on you, who did you look at the most? As far, who was your favorite when you were growing up?
Well, I mean, the first guy who was ever my favorite was Hogan, because I was, a little kid watching wrestling, and he was the coolest thing ever. But then Sting came along, and Sting was my number one guy when I was a little kid. Like before I understood anything about wrestling, like who was good, who was bad, who could work, who couldn't work, it was Sting. Like Sting was always my hero. And to this day, like when I think about growing up, Sting was my guy, like my absolute favorite of all time, Sting. But my favorite show, eventually on one of those UHF stations, we started getting the 1 hour cut down version of the Memphis TV show. And the first time I saw that, I was like, what is this? This is totally different. And the first show we saw was the episode where the stud stable, Robert Fuller is giving a present to everybody in the stud stable, and he gives everybody their presents, and the last guy is Brickhouse Brown. And he gives Brickhouse Brown a pick, hair grease, fried chicken, and watermelon. And I remember thinking, oh my God, how could they do that? This is the worst thing ever. And I remember asking my dad, like, Dad, how could they do that? That's so racist. That's so messed up. And he was like, I bet Brickhouse Brown's going to beat them up for that. And sure enough, Brickhouse Brown starts fighting with the stud stable, and it turns into a big angle with Brickhouse going babyface or whatever. And years later, when I was in Memphis, I actually got to drive Brickhouse around for a while, which leads to a lot of ridiculous stories because Brickhouse Brown is the craziest guy ever. And I remember asking Brickhouse Brown about that. I was like, dude, you were the first episode of Memphis Wrestling I ever saw. You were on it. It was this episode. And he was like, yeah, man, that was really hard. I was like, why was that hard? Like, what was hard about it? Letting them do something so racist to you? And he's like, nah, man, I needed all that stuff. I needed a new pick. You always need hair grease. And what man doesn't like fried chicken and watermelon? I'm like, oh my God.
Well, totally unrelated to that last story, I'm going to pass it off to the incredible Huck, Will Huckabee.
Thanks, Zane. Mark, first of all, thanks for being on the show. I've got to ask you, because I've met some of the people and stuff, but why don't you tell us who you were trained by once you actually decided to actually get into the wrestling business?
All right. Well, here's a story. I was in college, and it actually, like, I'd always wanted to be a wrestler. I loved wrestling, but it never occurred to me that I could be a wrestler. Like, I always played sports. I played football. I played basketball. I played soccer. But it never occurred to me that this was something that, like, normal human beings could do. And when I was in college, I was applying for grad schools, and for some reason, I just decided, you know what, the WWE's developmental is in Memphis. I'm going to apply to the University of Memphis for grad school. Just as a lark. Just like, it was probably the worst of the programs I was applying to, but I just figured I'm going to do this. So I applied to grad school there, and I heard from every other school. I got in every place I wanted to go, but I never heard from Memphis. And I was literally filling out an application for a $100,000 student loan to go to the University of Miami. And while I'm filling this out, the phone rings, and I didn't answer it. And I let the answering machine pick up, which gives you an idea of how long ago this was. And somebody says, "Hello, this is Professor Appleby from the University of Memphis. We're calling to tell you that we've accepted you in the program." And I sit there like, whatever, I don't want to go there anyway. And then the guy says, "We're going to offer you an assistantship." And I was like, "What the hell does that mean?" He says, "That means we pay your tuition and fees and pay you a stipend to go there." So I hear this, and he keeps talking, but I look down at my paper that I'm asking for $100,000 in a loan to go to grad school, and I hear this man saying free and they'll pay me. And I'm like, oh, shit. Sorry if I can't cuss. So I jump up and I literally dove over my couch and grabbed the phone in midair, ripped it out of the cradle, hit the ground, hit the wall, make this huge big noise, and just yelled into the phone, I'll take it, give it to me. Because, saving $100,000 to go to grad school is a pretty good thing. So I ended up going to Memphis. I ended up going to Memphis, Tennessee. Go ahead.
Hey, Mark, we've interviewed Rip Rogers before. You can say whatever you want.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That man uses, he paints with cuss words like Picasso paints with oils. Anyway, so I moved down to Memphis, and literally the first human being I call when I get there is Buddy Wayne, who is not the Pacific Northwest Buddy Wayne, the Memphis Buddy Wayne, because he was running the school. And he tells me how much it costs to go to train there, and I'm in grad school, I'm broke, so I ain't got the money right away. So I start trying to figure out how in the heck I'm going to pay for it. In the meantime, I find the gym that all developmental wrestlers go to, and I don't know if you guys know a guy named Steve Bradley, but Steve Bradley is probably the biggest influence on me as a wrestler. I thought he was amazing. Whenever I saw the Memphis shows, I was like, this guy should be on top in WWF. He's awesome. Well, he worked out at my gym. And I was always too intimidated to talk to him or any of the other wrestlers. I just wouldn't, And then one day I'm at the gym and I'm benching, and I feel this guy come and stand over me like he spot me. And I look up and it's Steve Bradley. And I almost pissed myself. I'm like, oh my God, it's Steve Bradley. And at the time I had OT. I had like designs I'd cut into him. So I finished my set and I sit up and I was like, can I help you? And he just stares at me for what felt like minutes. And he finally says, that's the stupidest facial hair I've ever seen. And so I was like, I don't know what the hell to say. I'm scared to death. I was like, here's this dude who I think's awesome. He's telling me I have the dumbest facial hair he's ever seen. He goes, what possessed you to do that? And I try to explain to him, and he starts calling over the other wrestlers. Like, look at this dude's facial hair. He ain't even in wrestling, and he's got facial hair this dumb. And he's just making fun of me, and I'm trying to defend myself. Like, I'm thinking, oh man, these guys hate me. They don't even know me. I think he's awesome, but like, he hates me. And finally, he just slaps him on the back, and he's just like, I'm just messing with you, man. It's cool. And we end up being buddies at the gym. Like, whenever we'd be at the gym together, we'd lift together, spot each other, whatever. He'd mess with me all the time. Remember one time, like, we were talking about wrestling, and I said something about how I thought Derek King was the best bumper of anybody in Memphis, anybody on the TV shows. And next is my turn to bench, and I'm benching, I've got it on my chest, and he leans over me, and he presses the barbell down with all his weight and puts all his weight on me, like crushing my chest. He's like, who's the best bumper? Who's the best bumper? Who's the best bumper? And I'm like, Derek King, Derek King, Derek King. And finally he's just pushing it down on me, just like literally stands up on it, puts all his weight on it. And I'm like, it's Steve Bradley. Steve Bradley's the best bumper. So he would just mess with me all the time, and we just got to be buddies, but I never mentioned to him that I wanted to be a wrestler. Like, it still wasn't something that I thought, was going to happen. Well, then probably about 9 months after I got there, the developmental got pulled from Memphis to go to Louisville. And the last day they were going to be there, I'm at the gym, and Steve and all the guys come in, and we work out. And as we're leaving, everybody walks off, and Steve's like, hey, I'll catch up. And he grabs me, and he pulls me over for a minute, starts talking to me, and he finally just says, when the fuck are you going to ask me about being a wrestler? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't think that whatever, just stammering, stuttering like an idiot. And he goes, man, shut the fuck up. It's obvious you love it. It's obvious you want to do it. If I can do it, you can do it. Just get off your ass and do it. And I'm like, well, I don't know about this. I don't know about that. It's like, look, there are like 5 wrestling schools in this town. Call one of them and just fucking go. And he said, if the next time I see you, you're not a wrestler, I'm going to kick your fucking ass. I was like, all right, man. Because I always figured I'd see him again, somewhere. And so they left, they get out of town, and, we kept up a little bit, not too much. And probably a week later, I called up a couple places around Memphis and finally found one that I wanted to go to. There are a couple schools, like one was this guy who ended up being an actor. He was in a couple of the Cena movies. He ran a school, and I went there one time, and I was just like, this guy has no idea what he's doing. So I didn't go back there. And then I found another school that was run by a guy named Tony Myers, who was enhancement guy in Memphis for years. Like, he was the ball rat, he was the wolf man, he had every goofy gimmick you could put on anybody. But he was down there for years on the WMC5 show, and he was running a school out of Danny Dunn's transmission shop up on Summer. Danny Dunn, for people who don't know, is one of Jerry Lawler's best friends. He has nothing to do with wrestling, but he's a really good friend of Lawler's. And he had turned his showroom into a TV studio because his son's dream was to produce wrestling television. So he turned this transmission shop studio into a TV studio, and they had a ring in there. So that was the first place I started training. So we start off with Tony, and he's teaching me the absolute basics and like just locking up and holds and the absolute like simplest stuff. And then a guy named Johnny Dotson, who was also a Memphis enhancement guy and was under developmental for WCW for a while. He would come in, and Johnny was more of a high flying guy. So Johnny taught me all the spots, stuff like that. And then after about 2 months, Danny decided that he didn't want the ring in the transmission shop showroom anymore. He wanted to turn that into more transmission bays, so he kicked us out. So suddenly after 2 months, I've got nowhere to train anymore. So I'm all freaking out. I'm asking Tony what we're going to do, and he's like, oh, don't worry about it. We're going to go to Don Bass's ring, and we're going to finish your training there. So I'm thinking, all right, it's just another place in Memphis. This is no big deal. We'll just go there. So the next week, Tony calls me up, and he's like, all right, come pick me up at this time, and we're going to go to Donnie's ring. All right, cool. So I go and I pick up Tony, and we start driving, and I'm thinking we're heading somewhere in Memphis. Next thing I know, we're going over the Hernando de Soto Bridge into Arkansas. I'm like, what is going on? Where are we going? Where are we going into Arkansas? Go into West Memphis, which is enough of a dump, and we head north on 55, and we end up in Jericho, Arkansas. There are no buildings in Jericho, Arkansas. There's no town. There's no nothing. We head down some road. We end up going down a dirt road that is Welsh Road. Now, if you know anything about Memphis, you know why that's significant, that it's Welsh Road. So we head down this dirt road, and I'm like, where in the hell is he taking me? And we pull up onto this gravel driveway, and there are 2 trailers, like trailer homes, down this road. And we start coming down it, and I see these 2 guys come out, one out of each house. And I'm thinking, we're going to get shot. We're going somewhere to get shot. And these guys come down the stairs, they stomp out looking all angry, like, who are these people coming up on our house? And then Tony gets out. I stay in the car. I'm like, you can get shot. I'm driving out of here. Tony jumps out, and as soon as they see him, they're like, oh, Tony, what's up? How are you? Blah, 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 blah. Shake him, give him the hugs and everything. I get out and walk up behind him, and Tony's like, oh, well, this is a guy I'm training. You mind if we use the ring? And Donnie's like, oh, yeah, go right ahead. Take him back there. And I'm looking around like, where in the hell can there possibly be a ring? There are no buildings. How can there be a ring? And they're like, yeah, just take him back there, open the door. You know the rules, though. Got to go by the rules. What the hell is going on? How is there a ring? And I look past the shed, like back into this field, or past the trailer, and back in this field, there's a shed. But like calling it a shed is being extremely generous to the term shed. Like, it looks like it's about to fall over. It's a tin shed, like tin roof, tin sides. Like, it is a mess. Like, this thing doesn't look like, it looked like it should be condemned. It looked like it was put up by, like, MC Escher, maybe. Like, it looks like one of those things. This thing does not look like it should be standing. So Tony pats me on the back, and he's like, all right, let's go over there. So we start walking over there, and we get to the door. And, like, it's barely a door. Like, it's barely held on there with, like, string and duct tape, and it's got one of those little, like, hook latches that's holding it shut. I was like, what? Like, there's no way there's a ring in here. This thing isn't even 10 feet tall. Like, how can there be a ring in here? We open the door, swings open. There's a concrete floor. There's a bench on one side. And then the right side of this shed is taken up by the loosest definition of a ring that you could ever imagine. Like, have you ever seen those pictures of places where the ring doesn't show up and it's just like some mats on the floor with no ropes? That is closer to a ring than this thing was. It was 4 layers of carpet on top of concrete with wooden posts in the ground surrounded by string. And that was the ring. Tony gets in it, and I'm looking at him like, you have got to be kidding me. We're going to wrestle in that? He's like, yeah, come on, get in the ring. And I'm like, this is not a ring. That is not a ring. And he's like, oh, come on, get in here. Next thing I know, Donnie comes in behind me, slaps me on the back, looks at Tony. He's like, he's green, isn't he? And Tony's like, yep, greener than goose shit. And Donnie's like, come on, kid, get in the ring. Well, I'm not going to tell Don Bass that this isn't a ring and I'm not getting in it. So I'm like, all right, I get in the ring and I'm kind of stepping around like there is no give. This is 4 layers of carpet on top of concrete. What are we doing? And Tony grabs me and he goes to shoot me off. And I'm like, what? He goes to shoot me off and he says backdrop. And I was like, what? Backdrop on this? No. He shoots me off. I start coming at him. He bends over and the only thought in my mind is I'm about to die. I'm going to die in this makeshift shed in a ring that isn't a ring in the outskirts of Jericho, Arkansas, in a tin shed in Memphis in August. This is a terrible idea. So Tony shoots me up. He flips me up in the air. I'm flipping over, and as I'm coming down, I'm just like, I will not survive this. But he had always told me if you learn how to bump flat, no matter how hard the ring is, you'll be all right. So somehow I land completely flat. Like, I land perfectly. And I immediately start checking my body parts. I'm like, all right, I can feel my arms, I can feel my legs, I can feel my neck, I can feel my back, I can feel my feet. All right, I'm in one piece. He must have seen the horror on my face, and he's like, all right, cool, man, you made it. Pulls me up again, and Donnie Bass is like, hey, good bump, kid, good bump. I was like, I'm kind of feeling good. I landed right. My trainers told me I did a good job. Donnie Bass told me I did a good job. And then Donnie says, well, Tony, you know the rules. I was like, I wonder what he means by that. And Tony says, all right, 99 more.
Are you serious?
And I thought, 99 more? And Tony shoots me off, and sure enough, I took 99 more backdrops.
Oh, my God.
And as you can probably imagine, as you go through those 100 backdrops, you start wanting to do them less and less and less. But you have to convince your body to land flat, because if it doesn't, you're screwed. So we go through this, and it takes a really long time to get through 100 backdrops. And we finally finish, and Tony's like, all right, take a break. And I go over, and I sit on the bench, and I had a bottle of water, and I'm drinking it. And Donnie walks in, he slaps me on the back, and he says, made it through, kid, good job, good job. That's the start. Now you got to do hip tosses and arm drags and everything else. I'm like, oh, man. And he's like, you can't be done already, are you? And I said, no, sir, I'm not. And I spit, and I swear everything that hit the ground was blood. And Donnie looks at it, he looks at me, he looks at it, he looks at me, snaps from the back again, says, you take a break for a minute, kid, and walks back out the door.
So, Mark, I've got to ask, how did you eventually end up training with Derek King and Tasha Simone?
Okay, so I kept going with Tony to Donnie's for probably another 3-4 months. And then Tony kind of disappeared because he had a situation. If you know, like, I love Tony. He got himself in some trouble. And so Tony kind of disappeared. And so I'd go to Donnie's some, and then it got harder to go out to Donnie's because I didn't feel like it felt weird going there without Tony. And so I'd go there with Johnny Dotson some, and eventually Johnny Dotson said to me, you're ready to go on the road. Just tell me when you're ready, and anywhere that you're booked, I'm booked. So I called up Johnny, and I said, hey, man, I'm ready to go as soon as you are. And he says, all right, pick me up this time. We're going to Boonville, Mississippi, I think was the first town. And from that point on, whenever Johnny was booked, I was booked. So that was like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'd pick up Johnny. We'd drive to some town somewhere within 3 hours of Memphis. We'd wrestle. We'd get back in the car. He'd say, keep it on the road, kid. He'd roll over and fall asleep, and I'd drive us home. And that was probably for about a year. And I thought I was learning what I was doing. I thought I was pretty good. I was very much wrong. And I had met Derek a couple of times previously when I was still working with Tony. We would go up, and Bobby Horn, Sir Mo, had a thing up in Dyersburg, Tennessee. So I went up there a couple times. and I met Derek, and we did not hit it off the first time. I wrestled on the show, and then they did a thing where they took out the ref, so I had to referee the main event. And without telling me, after the main event, they decided they were going to beat me up, which I later found out was my kind of initiation. And so they jumped me, and the heels all beat me up and put the boots to me and give me their finishes. And then the babyfaces run out, and they help me up, and one of them says to me, "Turn around, Derek's going to super kick you." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I turn around, and Derek super kicks me, and it was one of the hardest shots I ever took. Like, he just straight stiffed me. And I didn't even bump. I crumpled. I was like, whoa, what just hit me? And I'm laying there, and everybody's putting the boots to me, and I'm starting to come to again, and I'm looking around selling, and I look up, and I make eye contact with Derek, and he looks me dead in the face and just stomps me right on my nose and, like, crushed it, like, completely on purpose. And I'm like, all right, I see what you're doing. And I just sell or whatever, and I wait. They all leave, and I get carried to the back. And I come through the curtain, and I'm hot because I knew he did it on purpose. I knew it. And I come through, and I come into the locker room. I shake everybody's hand. I go straight to Derek, and I could just feel everybody thinking I'm going to punch him because I think everybody knew because they're all laughing when I came in there. So I go straight to Derek. I put my hand out, and I shake his hand. I say, "Thank you very much." And I turn around, and I walk back out the locker room. And I think everybody was like, that was weird. We thought he'd be pissed. And I didn't sell it. So then on the ride home, I'm talking to Tony, and Tony's like, you know why that happened tonight? And I was like, nah, but I'll tell you this. First time I get a chance, he's getting a fucking receipt. I'll bust in his mouth or something. And Tony told me by the time you get that chance, you won't want to anymore. So about a year and a half later, I've been wrestling in Mississippi and all the place, and I hadn't gone to work for Derek again. Well, Derek is running a company up in Dyersburg, different company now, and they're probably the best company in the area other than the Memphis Wrestling on TV. And I ran into Derek at another show. I had a match. He came up to me afterwards, and he was like, "Hey, I want you to come work for me in Dyersburg." Cool. So I come up to Dyersburg, start wrestling there, and quickly realized I wasn't nearly as good as I thought I was. I was pretty freaking awful. And Derek, Motley Cruz, and Tasha Simone were the ones kind of in charge of it. And after a show one day, Tasha and Motley, after a show, they're like, too many people here have gotten complacent. They're not coming up to training on Sundays. They're not coming to train on this and that and blah, 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 blah. And I honestly didn't know that they even trained on Sundays. So I went to them after the show, and I was like, "Hey, do you guys mind if I come up on Sunday?" And they're like, "Why would you come up on Sunday?" And I'm like, "Because I'm terrible." They're like, "We weren't talking to you at all. You don't need to come up." And I was like, "Oh, I really do. I really need to come up." So we'd wrestle on Saturday night in Dyersburg. I'd drive home. I'd sleep for a couple hours, get back in my car, drive back up to Dyersburg, train all day on Sunday, and then usually there was a show in Gibson, Tennessee or somewhere that night. We'd go wrestle there too. So that's when I started training with Derek, Motley, and Tasha, and that's when I really kind of started to learn to work. Derek is probably one of the most underrated workers you'll ever be around. Like, I steal so much from Derek. Like, he knows how to work that style as well as anybody you'll ever see. He was under developmental for a while and just was never in the right place at the right time. Like, I think he and Jason Lee could have done well as a mid-card tag team if they had ever gotten brought up, but Jason Lee kind of screwed that up and it messed up Derek, and he's never really got another chance. But I learned so much from Derek about psychology and working crowds. He was amazing. And then Motley had been around forever. Like, he used to work territories. We used to go up and hang out at Dave Milliken's house when he lived north of Memphis, and he had more wrestling on DVD than any human being I've ever seen. And he had stuff of Motley wrestling in Detroit for the Sheik, like wrestling Flair, all this stuff you wouldn't believe. So Motley had been around forever. He's actually the guy that, the famous Jumpin' Jeff Farmer promo. Yep, that one. Like, he's cutting that promo on Motley. So if you ever go and watch that, it'll link to Motley's rebuttal promo, and that's one of the guys who helped train me. And so Motley and Tasha, they just knew so much from having been around so long. I mean, Tasha trained with Chris Adams, and she'd been to Japan and Mexico and all over the place, and they knew holds that, to this day, I don't understand how they worked. Like, Motley could put you on your knees with a flick of a wrist. Like, he knew this one wrist lock that I could never get right, where basically you just hold your hand like you're holding hands with your girlfriend, and he could just turn his wrist, and no matter who you were, he could just put you on the ground. Like, I saw him do it to some of the biggest dudes I've ever seen. Like, if you've ever heard of a guy, Ali Stevens, he was in Memphis and he was on WCW Developmental. Huge dude, like Ahmed Johnson size. And I saw Motley Ali, he was like, hey, let me show you something. He put him in this hold and just flicked his wrist. And next thing you know, Ali is face down on the ground, like, let me go. Like, those guys just knew so much. And like, you had to really earn Motley and Tasha's respect. Like, they didn't give it to you, and they would scare the crap out of you. Like, the first time I worked with Motley, I heard I was going to work with them, and I was scared, like legit scared. Motley looks like a serial killer. And I'm sitting in the locker room. He didn't even come talk to me. He didn't say a word to me. I never had that happen before. And Tasha would just come over, and I'd be sitting there with a couple of my friends, and I'd go try to say something, and he just looked at me, and Tasha would be like, I'll be over in a minute to tell you what we're going to do. And I was like, oh, okay. So Tasha would come over, and she'd be like, can you do a drop kick? I was like, yeah, I can do a drop kick. Like, you still do the missile drop kick as a finish? Yes, ma'am, I do. Okay, we're going to do this and this. You're going to do this and this, but if you fuck it up, he's going to beat your ass. Okay. And then she'd leave. She'd come back 5 minutes later. Motley wants to do this and this. Can you do that? Yes, ma'am. All right, do that. But if you fuck it up, he's going to kick your ass. I was like, shit. And then they come over and they're like, all right, this is the finish. Molly's going to do da-da-da-da-da. He's going to miss this. Do this for your comeback. Hit the missile drop kick off the top. The rest of us are going to come in and beat your ass until so-and-so comes in for the save. If you screw anything up, Motley's just going to beat your ass for 10 minutes until they come in to save you. Like, okay, yes, ma'am. Motley didn't talk to me, like, the whole time until we get in the ring. Like, I didn't even hear his voice until he's calling spots. And luckily I didn't mess anything up, so he didn't kick my ass. So we do the whole match. Everything goes perfectly. I can still remember it, like, move for move, that entire thing. Like, he caught it all in the ring. And they hit the ring, and they're beating me down. And I'm just so happy they didn't get my ass kicked that I'm, like, smiling while they're kicking my ass. And we get to the back, and we come through the curtain. And Tasha comes up and she grabs me, and I thought she was hot. I'm like, oh no, I screwed up. She drags me over to Motley, and Motley's sitting there, and he doesn't even look at me. He's got a cigarette, he's smoking it, he's looking at the floor, and he starts saying stuff in the match and asking me about this and asking me about that, and I'm responding, and finally he's like, you did good. I'll see if I can get you booked some places. It's like, all right, sweet. So he like made me earn it, man. Like he did not give respect away. He did not give training away. Like, if you were going to get knowledge from him, he was going to make sure that you deserved it. So, like, every time I went up there to train, like, they would kill us. Like, we would do all this cardio and squats and stuff, and then we'd take a million bumps before we got to do anything. And then they would stretch us. Like, Motley knew all the holds, man. He knew every old school hooker hold. He'd put us in them. And then Tasha knew them too, so Tasha would put you in them, and they would just stretch you and stretch you and stretch you, and like, after being there for like 2 hours, 2.5 hours, then they'd be like, okay, now we're going to learn some stuff. You're dead. Like, you're blown up, you're sore from bumps, you've been stretched all to hell, like your eyes are bloodshot from these holes they put you in. Now like, okay, now we're going to learn to run some spots. And then you do that for an hour, and then be like, all right, now we're going to do some matches. And matches would consist of the guys who were trainees working against Motley, Tasha, Derek, and somebody, and them just beating you up for an hour.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Wrestling Nerdcast on the Angry Marks podcast. I'm the incredible Will Huckabee, and I'm gonna turn it back over to my esteemed colleague, the bearded wonder, Zane Paisley. Zane, what other questions do you have for the Mempho Mofo?
Well, Mofo, you said that you came to University of Memphis for graduate school. What did you study?
Undergrad, I've got degrees in English literature and studio art and a minor in theater. And then in grad school, I got my master's in communications, which was basically film school.
So were you a theater kid in high school then?
I was not. I did absolutely no theater in high school at all. I played sports, and I remember the guy who was, I really wish I had though. Like, I honestly think I would have liked it better. Like, I liked sports, but I never loved them. Like, I never loved playing. Like, by that time, I didn't love soccer, and I didn't love football, and I didn't really love basketball anymore. It was just sort of like I'd always done it, so I kept doing it. And I coached a kids basketball team, and the son of my high school drama teacher was on our team. And at our last little end of the year party, I just stood up and I said something about every kid as I was giving them their trophy. And afterwards, the theater teacher, Mr. Smith, comes up and he's like, why don't you take theater? And I was like, it's not for me. I'm an athlete. I don't do theater. Theater's for nerds. And he started to talk me into it, and I just wouldn't do it. It never even crossed my mind as something I would like doing. But I would always make like mini movies and stuff when I would have classes. Like we had a video camera and I'd edit between two VCRs and I'd always be in them. So I always like did acting, but I just never really, I don't know. I thought theater was for nerds. So, when I went to college at UVA, I originally thought I was going to be a, doctor. Huge mistake. I was terrible at organic chemistry. I could not do that at all. And, so starting my second year, I totally bombed organic chemistry. And I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to be a doctor. I got to figure out what I'm going to do. So I knew I really liked studying literature and I really liked painting and stuff like that. So I was like, all right, I go down this path. And I took a class that summer. It was a, film and literature class. So we'd like read adaptations of books that were made into movies. And I loved it. And my professor in there was like, he made movies on the side. So he was like, hey, why don't you, I think you'd be good doing this or doing that. Have you ever acted before? I'm like, no, not really. But he put me in this movie and I loved it. I thought this is so much fun. And so I started taking theater classes at Virginia, like every single one that I could. And I guess in the back of my mind, I was thinking this might be good for wrestling if I ever decided to do wrestling. So I took as many theater classes as I could there in UVA. And then when I went to Memphis and started grad school, I didn't like the film program as much as I liked the theater program. So I ended up hanging out almost exclusively with theater kids. I just got along with them better. I liked working with them better. I liked doing theater a lot better. And I felt like I was learning a lot more from them. So I ended up doing way more theater stuff in grad school than I did film stuff. And I think that helped me a lot when it came to wrestling just because I already had the training in kind of improv and getting a message across. And it really helped me with promos and things like that just because I was used to it from all that training I got to do in grad school. So I never did theater in high school. Like if I could go back, I totally would. I would have dropped football and basketball and soccer and all that stuff and had been a theater nerd, man. I would have much rather have done that.
Well, since this is the Wrestling Nerdcast, I understand from what you said, growing up in D.C., you were a total wrestling nerd. What else were you nerdy about?
Man, wrestling and comic books were like my number one and number two thing. Soccer, man, was my first love when it came to sports. So I played travel, I played district, I played states, I played region team, qualified for the national pool. So soccer, man, was every single weekend I played soccer. And my dad went to Georgetown, and so my youth was about the time that they started being good in basketball. So I got really into college basketball at a young age and was a really big Georgetown basketball fan. So like John Thompson and Patrick Ewing and Michael Williams and Michael Jackson and all these guys who were Georgetown basketball legends, Allen Iverson and Victor Page and those guys. I was a super geek for Georgetown basketball too. So those were like my main things, man. I loved wrestling, comic books, soccer, and college basketball.
Well, very cool. I know that Will's got at least a few more questions for you, but do you mind participating in our 3 count real quick?
Shoot it. Let's go.
Okay. All right. Well, the 3 count is where we talk about 3 hot topics in pro wrestling. So I'm going to start off the first topic. This is pretty much geared towards Will Huckabee. Will, you were at WrestleCade this past weekend. Tell us all about it. Tell us who you marked out for. Tell us who surprised you by being cool. Tell us everything about WrestleCade.
Man, because I know Mark has been at WrestleCade before. Haven't you, Mark?
I have not, actually. I've never been.
Oh my God. So, like, WrestleCade is a wrestling fan group, dream. But it's also a great place, for the boys, for wrestlers and stuff, to all get together and stuff and hang out, for, 2-3 days or whatever. The highlight for me, I guess, marking out moment for me, was to actually see Jack Victory in person. He was sitting at the table with Steve Corino and C.W. Anderson and stuff. And of course, I work for Steve Corino and I love C.W. Anderson because I'm a huge Arn Anderson fan, Mark, whatever you want to call it. And so I knew who Jack Victory was. And to finally meet him was a huge, huge thing for me. I think I mentioned on last week's show that I was really excited to meet Coco Beware. Finally got a chance. A buddy of mine was actually assisting Coco Beware at his gimmick table. And he knew that I specifically wanted to get a picture and talk to Coco Beware. because he's one of my favorite black wrestlers of all time. And so I actually got a chance to actually sit at the table and talk to Koko B. Ware and actually ask him about a specific match in Memphis, where he was beating up some enhancement guy, and I don't know what the enhancement guy did.
The Patriot.
Was it the Patriot?
It was the Patriot.
Where
not the Patriot, Del Wilt, but it was some guy as the Patriot.
Okay, well, he gave him like the sickest brain buster of all time. And so I had to ask him, I was like, hey, this match, you beat the brakes off this guy, gave him like the sickest brain buster of all time. Like, and of course, Koko B. Ware is still, he's very old school, so he basically called it like a pile driver. But I asked him what was up with that match and stuff, and he was like the guy, actually, I guess like one of the first punches in the match where the guy punched him in the mouth and busted his lip. And the guy was just throwing potatoes, and he just got fed up with it. He's like, after the second one, he was like, the hell with it, and just decided to beat the shit out the guy. My first WrestleCade moment, I think, was after I checked into the hotel. I was going to the venue for the Night of Champions, which was an amazing show, and I almost lost all of my credibility in professional wrestling, Zane, because I was talking to a friend of mine who had just flew in from Florida and almost backed up into Ivan Koloff and almost knocked him over. Say again?
Uncle Ivan?
Yes. So I was almost known for being the guy who knocked over Ivan Koloff and breaking one of his hips, I think. Luckily it didn't happen, but that was my close call.
I did that. I actually did that to Bret Hart a few years ago, where I stood up from a table as he was walking by and literally, and I can't remember if it was his hip or what was going on, but he was wobbling anyway. So yes, I understand that feeling.
Night one was Night of Champions, a lot of great matches. There were so many different companies represented at WrestleCade. Wildcat Wrestling from Louisiana, Reality of Wrestling, AML, PWX, so many indie stars, Lucha Libre, Lucha Underground. Friday night, in my opinion, the best match was Jason Kincaid versus Pentagon Jr. Those guys just tore the house down. It was such an amazing match. I couldn't believe it. Saturday was the Fan Fest, and of course, it's the big show where all the names are there and all the legends. And Ric Flair, of course, was there, and Scott Steiner, Matt Hardy, Koko B. Ware. Surprising note is that the Brooklyn Brawler, Steve Lombardi, is in phenomenal shape. I don't know if any of you have seen him lately. He is in immaculate shape. That guy looks like $1 million. Let's see. Brian Christopher, talking backstage with Brian Christopher and Rikishi were really cool, down-to-earth guys and stuff. The Rockaway Express, of course, was there. It was just really cool to talk to everybody. The ladies of ROH was there. The Women of Honor were there, and then Queens of Combat, they set the table. The night show was phenomenal also. They had a really great, the main event. Okay, so I'll talk about the main event in a few seconds, but, they had a Lucha Underground, 6-man tag where it was, Deadshot, aka Shane Strickland, versus Ricochet, who was Prince Puma, and Matt Cross, versus Juventud Guerrero, Caleb Conley, and Sanjay Dutt. It was supposed to have been Caleb Conley, actually took the place of Jason Kincaid, who had got hurt earlier in the day and really couldn't do anything. He really messed his shoulder up and stuff. And so they put in Caleb Conley, who did a phenomenal job. So many great, the best part of that match, besides, the high flying and the spots, was the very complicated reversals, and transitions that they were doing and stuff. There was a couple of moves and stuff that I've definitely added to my mental Rolodex, to use at a later date. But the highlight of Saturday night show, the actual WrestleCade show, was Broken Matt Hardy versus Ryback. I don't know what Ryback was thinking. I don't know. I have no idea, but Ryback did a slingshot dive, and then he actually did a tope suicida between the top and middle ropes on the Matt Hardy. Yes, I'm not lying. For some reason, Ryback decided that he wanted to be a flippy do guy, whatever, as Jim Cornette would say. just doing things that you never seen Ryback do. Doing things that for a guy his size was pretty impressive. Matt Hardy got the win and stuff. You can follow WrestleCade on social media. Matt Hardy got the win and was the final WrestleCade champion, being that this will be the final WrestleCade ever. A couple of other highlights from Saturday night was Cody Rhodes, who was a really, really cool guy, man. Like, not as tall as I thought he would be either. I don't know if that's just a thing with professional wrestling where, you meet guys in real life and you realize they're not as tall as you assumed. On TV, Cody Rhodes looks like he's a good 6'2", 6'3", and turns out he's closer to like 6 feet, 6'1". I don't know. But really down to earth guy was sitting back there talking and laughing and stuff. Of course, I'm not going to get into the after show festivities, but there was a lot of them. There was a lot of people hanging out and staying at the Marriott Hotel in Winston-Salem. If you weren't there, you missed out on a lot of things, including me being called the Black Chase Stevens. There
are so many reasons I could think of that you'd be called Chase Stevens.
Let's just go with the fact that there was a lot of alcohol involved with my WrestleCade weekend.
That would be the number one reason.
Yes, and being that besides the Battle Royal Saturday morning, I had nothing else to do, so I did a lot of drinking this weekend. And not only was I doing a lot of drinking, but I was trying to convince a lot of guys, hey, you're not doing anything else this weekend. You might as well drink with me. Whatever, let's go. Mark, you hung out with Chase Stevens, so you know exactly what that's like.
Yep.
And then Sunday morning, went to the George South, who was Ric Flair's favorite enhancement guy and stuff, and is a legend in North Carolina. Had the church service that was very beautiful. The sermon that he gave was very awesome. And then there was the Queens of Combat show earlier in that day because, of course, people had to travel and leave Sunday to go to work Monday morning. Highlights from that was watching Cedric Alexander's significant other, Ariel. Watched her wrestle. There was Tessa Blanchard. She was on the show. Man, it was so many great female matches. Taylor Hendricks had to have been the female standout from WrestleCade. Her moves, she's just so crisp and so clean, and her gimmick is just so great and stuff. I understand why she is where she is right now and stuff. But that was WrestleCade. I'm trying to think if there was any other surprises.
Hey, Will, did you run into Kelly Klein?
Yes. Oh my goodness. How did I forget Kelly Klein? So yeah, talked to Kelly Klein, and then Kelly Klein may or may not have told me that I wasn't doing life correctly, because I don't have, an outstanding amount of shoes. Her and a friend of mine were talking about shoes because Kelly Klein had some very interesting heels on Saturday during the daytime, and so I mentioned them. And they started talking about shoes, and because I have less than like 20 pairs of shoes, she basically called me a loser.
Did you ask her about her beard and or stroking my beard?
Yes, she said that you had one of the best beards in professional wrestling, and I asked her how did she feel being a bearded lady, and she said that she felt incredibly sexy. She said she was the best looking bearded lady in the history of bearded ladies.
You are kidding. Kelly Klein did not put over my beard.
She totally put over your beard.
Oh, man. Why didn't you lead with that? That's the whole reason I asked you about WrestleCade.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was talking about Coco Beware. We're playing. My bad. Like, it's all about Zane's beard.
Well, that sounds like an awesome weekend. I didn't know that this was going to be the last WrestleCade.
Yeah, this is because the company that puts on WrestleCade, AML, actually runs, monthly shows and stuff in the Winston-Salem, Charlotte area. And so, putting together a show the size of WrestleCade is a humongous task in and out of itself. So they're going to take that energy that they've been putting into WrestleCade and putting on a great WrestleCade experience for all the fans. They're going to take that energy and they're going to actually put it towards the AML product and stuff. That
sounds awesome.
Oh, I forgot to mention that this weekend also there was a huge. Everybody wished Juventud Guerrero a happy birthday in the lobby at the Marriott. Turns out his birthday was this past Saturday. But we also seen probably one of the last I guess, in-ring appearances of the Extreme Horsemen being C.W. Anderson and Steve Corino. People haven't heard the news by now, and if you're on social media, I don't know how you didn't. One of my mentors, Steve Corino, has accepted a job at the WWE Performance Center as a trainer.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome. That's going to be wild. Steve Corino working with Shawn Michaels there. That's going to be crazy.
Yes.
All right, let's move on to question number 2. The Raw Women's Division.
One
Sasha
quick
Banks.
thing for Huck. You're a Coco fan?
I mean, I love Coco Beware.
I've got a match for you to watch.
Okay.
It's Coco and Tito Santana from Madison Square Garden, probably around 89-ish. It's Coco's only heel match in WWF.
What? I will look for that match.
It's been on YouTube. It's one of my, unknown favorite matches that nobody ever watches. I just think it's great. Coco would have been such a good little general heel if they had let him do that, and you can totally see it in that match.
I'm going to definitely check that out when we get off the air.
Hey, send me the link to that, Will, and I'll post it on our Facebook page.
Deal.
Okay. All right, question number 2, Raw Women's Division. Sasha Banks just took the belt off of Charlotte Flair on Raw. It seems odd that Sasha keeps winning the belt on Raw and Charlotte keeps winning it at pay-per-views. I'll start with you, Mark. Do you think that the other women on Raw are sick of the back and forth between Sasha and Charlotte and that they're not getting a shot, or are they just happy that women's wrestling is getting some spotlight on it?
I haven't watched WWE TV in easily 2 years, probably longer, so I have no idea.
Okay, that's
Sorry.
No problem. What are your thoughts, Will?
Well, I'm going to tell you, Mark, right now, if you have watched nothing else when it comes to WWE, you definitely need to watch these women matches. I know if you're on social media, on Twitter and Facebook, you see guys talking about the matches. These ladies are putting on some of the best matches on the card, period, which is why they're getting, the main event spots, at pay-per-views and on Monday Night Raw. With your question, Zane, I don't think that the ladies backstage are getting tired of, it being Sasha and Charlotte. Right now, with the exception of Bayley and, what's the NXT Women's Champ name? I can't remember her name right now.
Dolly Parton's reaction to the tragedy in her.
Asuka.
Yes, Asuka. With the exception of those two ladies, Charlotte and Sasha putting on the best match. They're two of the best ladies in the division. I think that they are leading the charge, and the better matches that they have, and the more they put on, main event matches, the better it is for the ladies in the back. If we look at a lot of ladies in the back, Bayley and Nia Jax and all these ladies and stuff, they're putting on good matches, but they're not main event quality. So, they're getting better, and while they're getting better, Sasha and Charlotte are leading the charge to make a statement saying, hey, just because we're females doesn't mean that we're not as good, if not better, than a lot of the male talent that you have here. And we deserve our spot. We deserve our time in the spotlight just as much as any of our male counterparts.
Okay. All right.
I have I'm a weird wrestling fan.
Sure.
This is odd. The matches are probably my least favorite thing about pro wrestling. So if you ask me about my favorite stuff in wrestling history, the stuff that inspired me the most, it's never a match, except the one memory that made me go, I really have to do this was a match. But other than that, I have never been enthralled in wrestling by just a match. So even when people tell me, oh, this is the greatest match, you got to watch it, it never hooks me, because I was somebody who, I loved the build up, I loved the promos, I loved the hatred, I loved the rivalry, and when it got to the match, I didn't care if it was a great match. I cared how that advanced the story. When I think about Savage and Steamboat, everybody thinks about the match at WrestleMania 3. I think about the ring bell to the throat. I think about Bruno Sammartino doing that interview with Savage when he's yelling at him at the end. He goes, "You piece of slime!" and he grabs him and starts fighting him, and that led to Sammartino and Savage matches. I think about George Steele getting involved. I think about Steamboat coming back, and then and they had that match that everybody loved. So to me, like the thing to me that I miss in wrestling, like I think there are more great matches that you can watch today than have ever happened at any point in time ever. But to me, the thing that I miss whenever I try to watch something now is that intense hook that makes this match part of a larger story. Like I got into watching New Japan for a while just because of the greater arc between Tanahashi and Okada. I was like, they're telling this amazing story. I don't understand any of the promos, but I can watch them and feel that intensity and know that this rivalry is this bigger thing and every match fits into that storyline advancement and they're telling that story through the physicality. That's what I miss. So like, I don't know enough about what's going on with Charlotte and Sasha or if their angles have been strong enough that if I sat down and watch it, I'd be like, oh man, now I'm hooked. Now I want to watch this match on Raw. Like no matter how great it is, it could be a 5-star match. It could be one of the 50 greatest matches of all time. If I don't know the hook leading into it, then I just don't ever get as excited about it as I used to be. Like that's the thing that I miss. Like I hear people talking, like I didn't watch the Goldberg and Brock stuff, but I heard people talk about it. I was like, that sounds sweet. That sounds awesome. Like that's what hooks me. Is that greater than life personalities, boom, going head to head, and that's what I like.
I will say this, Mark, because we know nowadays Vince is not letting anybody, with very, very few exceptions, the majority of the talent there at WWE is not cutting their own promos. They're being handed the script saying, hey, memorize this and go. They're not being given like bullet points like, hey, it's you and Sasha here, here, and here, make it happen. So I think that the story that they have, with the restrictions that, you know, wrestlers at that level have nowadays and stuff. I think they're doing a great job telling the story of, like you said, the Tanahashi Okada one-upmanship, with Sasha coming from, you know, the Boston area, training with Brian Fury and stuff at Killer Kowalski's old school and stuff, from her coming from the Indies, making her way up, and then Charlotte, you know, being the offspring of probably what most consider the greatest wrestler of all time. I think that they're definitely telling a great story between, you know, white collar, you know, the wrestling royalty versus the blue collar, princess or whatever you want to call it. I think they tell a really great story there. But they just have so many restrictions as far as promos and stuff go because of creative.
Well, and that's what I miss so much. I miss that money promo. Like I'll just pull up Austin Idol promos and watch half an hour of Austin Idol promos and be like, man, I want to buy a ticket. Oh wait, that was 30 years ago. I can't buy a ticket.
All right, we're running a little short on time, so I'll go ahead and hit question number 3. Kenny Dykstra, Kenny from the Spirit Squad, has been fired from his job at a nonprofit charity because he's missed too many days, because he's been working SmackDown tapings. He knew that was quite a possibility, and he doesn't blame his former employer for firing for missing days. He's been working those WWE dates without a contract. Will, do you think that it's smart of him to, you know, bet on getting back in with the WWE, or do you think that he should have kept his old job?
I think that, you know, basically they have him basically almost in the same slot that he was in before. I don't think that me, myself personally, I don't know if I would have, you know, risked my job and stuff while making my bread and butter to work WWE dates, especially, for the fact that they haven't reinvented him. They haven't, you know, as far as I know, they haven't offered him a contract. There's no rumors of him getting a contract. It's just him doing dates and stuff the same as any other, you know, non-contract any guy. It's like, hey, can you be in this city? What's your spot? Yes, you know what I'm saying? I wouldn't have, me myself personally, having a family and stuff, I wouldn't have lost my regular job for that, especially at his level, with the money that he's making, you know, with the nonprofit. I wouldn't have, without them, you know, without some kind of carrot being dangled in front of me. If they would have at least reinvented his character, reinvented his gimmick, brought him back, you know, as something different than what he was before he left, then I feel like he might have had a chance of getting a contract. With things being the way it is now, I think they're just going to, you know, they're just kind of stringing him along, and then he'll work a couple more dates, and that'll be it.
Well, I talked to a former WWE name. he told me that he was offered a 3-month run with the company. So yeah, and he said that we'll probably see that a lot more often. We have already seen guys like Kurt Hawkins come in, and they have those 3 months haven't been up, so we'll see if what I was told is correct. But I'm hoping for him. Do you have any thoughts on it, Mark?
I'm of the belief that always believe in yourself, and if you have that faith in yourself and your abilities, then you're gonna find a way to land on your feet if you hustle enough. So to me, if Ken Dykstra Doan, if he believes that, you know what, I like my job with this nonprofit, but if WWE doesn't work out, I'm going to find another job that I like just as much, or I'm going to start my own business and do just as well with that, then I think he did the right thing, man. You don't know when you're going to get that chance, and you got to believe in yourself that you're going to go down the right path. You know, I've been offered jobs doing, pro wrestling full time and making money at it, and they were never the one that I wanted. It was never the offer that I wanted, and I had to have confidence in myself to come in the face and say, no, this isn't for me, and walk away from it, And this guy, that kind of faith in himself, and he doesn't have a family situation where it's a big concern, and he can say, you know what, thank you, I've loved working here, but this is my dream, and this is what I want to do, and I'm going to walk away. Then walking away, man, is the best thing you can do.
All right. Mark, we've got, I know that Will's got a couple more questions for you, and then we'll have a big question at the end, big group discussion question at the end. But before I pass it back over to the Incredible Huck, tell everybody how they can follow you on social media.
Everything is Mempho Mofo. So on Twitter, I'm at Mempho Mofo. On Facebook, it's facebook.com/ either Mempho Mofo if they're feeling nice. If they're restricting Mofo, which they do from time to time, it's facebook.com/ Mark Rivera Wrestler. MemphoMofo.com is my website. Email is memphomofo@memphomofo.com. The YouTube is youtube.com/ Mempho Mofo. So if you want to follow me, if you want to see any of my shenanigans, man, just search Mempho Mofo. I'm the only one.
All right, Will, what do you have left for the Mofo?
All right, I got two questions for you, Mofo. Number one, the black and yellow gear and stuff. I've noticed throughout almost your entire career, it's always been black and yellow. Is that because you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan?
That it is. As I said before, my entire family is from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My mom and dad both grew up there. My grandparents lived on Bailey Avenue on Mount Washington, looking down over downtown. My wife, Mrs. Mofo, is from northwestern Pennsylvania as well, and went to Pitt and lived in Pittsburgh for several years. So I am a diehard Pittsburgh fan in all sports: football, baseball, hockey, all of the above. I am a black and yellow fellow.
And my last question, because I don't know if Dan realizes it or not, but you are also a former NWA Continental Champion, correct?
'Tis true. I am a former NWA Continental Champion, one of the longest reigning NWA Continental Champions of all time. 609 days.
I was about to say 609 days to be exact, which is twice as long, almost twice as long as my title reign.
So you get it back and have it for 610, my man.
Yeah, I'm definitely working on that. If the opportunity arises and stuff, because we've seen, you can never say anything is a done deal in professional wrestling. We've seen Damian Wayne leave the NWA and then go to AIWF and then come back and regain the NWA national title for a third time. If the opportunity arises, will we see the Mofo in an NWA ring again, whether competing or challenging for the Continental title or any other title?
Man, they don't even have to offer me a title shot. I will wrestle and fall down on purpose anywhere that they want me to do that. I have no problem with the NWA. The person who I had the issue with is no longer there, so I don't care. That issue has been settled and is long ago gone, and I carry no heat or animosity towards the NWA. To me, it's the longest lasting professional wrestling organization. When I ran NWA Fusion along with my two partners, I loved being able to say that we were part of the NWA. I loved being able to talk to old school fans and say that we were part of the NWA. I have mad respect for the NWA. I love NWA Classics on demand. I think that stuff is amazing. Being able to watch matches with Johnny Valentine and Bill Curry. Oh, my Lord. My Lord. Bill Curry. Oh, man. So, and if there are any NWA promoters or other promoters out there who want the one and only baddest mofo on their show, book the mofo. Mempho Mofo at memphomofo.com.
All right,
NWA,
I'm going to try.
AIWF, whatever.
I'm going to try to get NWA Circle City Wrestling to bring in Bad Blood. He's appeared there before. Get the Mempho Mofo out here to Indianapolis, and then also bring up the Incredible Huck. We'll have a three-way dance for that Continental Championship.
Tremendous. I have never wrestled in Indiana, so I need to knock that off my list.
And I've never wrestled the Mofo, even though we've been in the locker room and shared a couple laughs and stuff.
I know, that's never happened. I gotta figure out how to keep that dude from suplexing me.
All right, guys. Well, the big question of the week is that WWE is going to be running a women's tournament similar to their Cruiserweight Classic, where they're going to bring in women from all over the world to wrestle, and most of them are not going to be under a WWE contract. If you had to pick one name to bring in for that tournament that you would like to see wrestle, who would it be? And I'll start with you, Huck.
Oh, man. If I can only pick one person?
Yes.
One person.
Well, okay, you guys have friends. You can pick two or three.
Okay, I would say Jessica Havoc. She is a fucking monster. Jesus. And I think that she will fill the slot that Awesome Kong was about to fill with the whole Diva Beater thing. Kelly Klein, because I think that Kelly Klein is the future of women's professional wrestling. She has a great look. She's a very beautiful woman. And she's very talented, but she is a wrestler first and a female wrestler second. When you watch her wrestle, you know that she can go in there with the guys just as well as the females. And then, of course, I would have to say my favorite female wrestler of all time, Casey Carlisle. What hasn't she done besides wrestle in the WWE ring, on the big stage? I think that just because of her body of work and all the things that she's done and all the other, not only female but male wrestlers that she has mentored and influenced and stuff, she deserves, more than anything else, she deserves to be on that main stage, and the rest of the world needs to see how great an actual old school female wrestling heel looks like, what an old school female wrestling heel looks like. I've seen Casey Carlisle get more out of a single smirk on her face than a lot of male wrestlers get out of doing a 450 or a 720 or whatever the hell you want to say.
Okay, Mark, what you have anybody in mind?
Well, Huck picked three good ones, and I'm not going to double up, so I'll name some different ones. I got to start with Taylor Hendricks. She is a fellow friend of Bob Evans, so I'm a big fan of hers. I love that she can cut a promo. I love that she can cut a great promo. I love that she understands how to get heat. I'm a big fan of hers. I wish I could have seen whatever she did at WrestleCade, because I knew she would have been tremendous. She's a great talent that's different, which is another important thing. She's super different. The second one, I would say Jessie Belle Smothers. I've been working with her up at RWA in Pittsburgh for about a year and a half now. And she's a great heel. She can be a great baby face. She has been awesome to work with, doing a program I did with Shane Andrews, where I know none of y'all have seen it, but it's amazing. And we doubled the houses for that town over the course of a year that we were feuding, and Jessie had a ton to do with it. And I would love to see her get an opportunity, because she's different from anybody else, and she fucking comes from the Smothers family, which is amazing. And then lastly, Kennedy Brink. When I first met her, she was Jessie K, and she looked completely different. And she was somebody who took the opportunity that was given her at the NWA Mid-Atlantic Fan Fest when she trained there. And she did a great job, and she got to work with Kong, and I think Kong taught her a lot. And then she took that opportunity, moved down to Florida, trained at the 3D school with the Dudleys, and got 1,000,000 times better, transformed her body, has become a whole new person. And I think she's earned an opportunity with one of the three companies too. So those will be my three people. It'll be Taylor Hendricks, Jesse Smothers, and Kennedy Brink.
All right. Well, I've just got two. Paloma Starr, who is now up in the Chicago area. And
shoot, Paloma. Damn it. I should have said that. She was on Team Taz with me. Sorry, Paloma. Love you.
Well, and Will, you might be seeing her soon. She's going to be debuting at Atlanta Wrestling Entertainment. So check her out. She's awesome. And Heidi Lovelace, who's worked for Chikara, Shimmer, Resistance Pro. She's awesome. She just had a tryout with WWE, so she might be in that tournament. So they're aware of her. So.
And that's the reason why I didn't mention like Candice LeRae and stuff and Kimberly, because I think that they also got tryouts at the same time. That same trial that WWE did live and stuff. I think that they were all a part of that huge group.
Yes, but you didn't say them. I said anybody that's not signed. Now, as far as I know, they haven't been signed. That's why I didn't say Crazy Mary, because she is signed.
I'm still sticking with Casey Carlisle, though.
Oh, you guys both had great choices, so. All right, nerds, what do you got going on coming up? Mark, you got any shows coming up this coming week?
Well, this weekend I am off because of my daughter, Josie the Jofo's baptism. So the weekend is taken up by something much more important. Then the following weekend on January 10th, I will be in West Newton, Pennsylvania for the Renegade Wrestling Alliance. I will be taking on a mystery opponent. I don't know who is going to be the next victim of the Mafia kick up against the steel post. The next person I'm putting on the shelf right next to Chris Taylor and Ryan Edmonds and Ryan Mitchell and everybody else that the Mofo has put in hospital bed since he's been in RWA, but he's sure it's going to be somebody. Somebody else is going to end up in the hospital bed. Last month, he took out the announcer dock, wrapped a chair around his head, and then smashed it with another chair just for the fun of it. And supposedly there's going to be a contract signing as well for the Mofo to take on Chris Taylor in January at the anniversary event for RWA, but the Mofo doesn't think Chris Taylor's going to show up because he's a chicken. So January 10th, West Newton, Pennsylvania, the Mofo back for RWA. Get your tickets now.
All right, Will, what do you got coming up?
Well, first of all, I want to say, I miss working at RWA. Me and my buddy Joe Black used to work there about a year and a half, 2 years ago, right before Mempho started working up there and stuff. So I kind of miss it. I'm going to have to contact the powers that be at RWA and see if I can be the one guy to not end up in the hospital after facing Mofo. But this weekend, Saturday, I am actually, once again, a professional wrestler. We're a part of the community, and sometimes that means you have to give back. So this weekend, I'm heading to Princeton, West Virginia. It's an event called Wrestling with Love. It's a 100% charity show. All the proceeds from the door, the concession stand, and as far as I'm concerned, everything that I make at my gimmick table is going to charity for a wrestling fan of WVCW, where I'm the heavyweight champ and stuff. Was a victim of a violent crime and passed away. And this is the first Christmas that her widowed husband and her children are spending without their mother and stuff. So a lot of the guys in the West Virginia, Tennessee, Western North Carolina area and stuff are traveling up. Thanks to Jason Kincaid, we're donating our time and our money and stuff to give back to a family who supports professional wrestling. And that's what I'm doing this weekend.
Hey, Huff, do they got a GoFundMe or anything where people can donate?
Yes, I'll actually give the info to Kevin, to our producer, Killer Kevin, stuff at the end of this podcast, so he can post it on not only on our Facebook, but also on our Twitter and everything also. So, not only wrestling fans, but hopefully, any wrestlers out there who want to donate and stuff to the cause and to his family and stuff can do so.
Well, that sounds awesome, Huck. Best of luck raising some funds for that family.
Oh, I got to ask you, I got to ask before we let him go. Mofo, Brutal Bob is coming to North Carolina and stuff in December 17th. Are you going to be in the house?
Most likely not. I would love to be there. I would love to be hanging with Bob and Mike, Congo and PQ and everybody, but encourage everybody to go to Elizabeth City, North Carolina, hang with Bob, train with Bob. Best thing you can do. You will learn a ton. You'll learn more than you will in months and months and months of matches by hanging with Bob. Check it out. Next Evolution Wrestling, Elizabeth City, North Carolina. Hang with Bob. Go do it. Trust me, believe me when I tell you it's the best thing you can do. Do it.
All right. Well, on that, you guys have a fantastic week. Make sure to hit the subscribe button to the Angry Marks Podcast Network. So if you go to iTunes, search keyword Angry Marks, all one word, hit that subscribe button. Check us out on Facebook. Everybody have a great week and stay nerdy.
You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.